Hey guys, welcome to this video on Git commands, where we're going to cover the 11 essential Git commands that you'll probably be using 90% of the time. Now, I am assuming for this video that you already have Git installed and configured on your system. If you don't, then make sure to do that first so you're able to follow along with my examples. And with that being said, let's begin. So here's a list of the 11 commands that we'll be covering here. Let me just go through all of these very quickly. So we'll talk about git init, git status, git add, git commit, git log, git branch, git checkout, git merge, git push, git pull, and git clone. So the way this video will work is that for each command, I'm first going to give you a little definition or an overview of what it does. And after that, I'm going to take you through an example which you'll be able to follow along so that we actually practice using that command in our code. So let's begin with our first command, which is git init. So the word init is short for initialize. So as you may guess, the git init command is the first command you have to run in order to start using Git in your project. So what it does is it initializes an empty Git repository in our directory. Now, if you're using a pre-built environment like the Create React app, for example, it will already have Git ready for you to use, so you won't have to initialize it separately. But if you are building your own project, then you will have to actually run this command. So for our example here, all I have right now is an empty folder here called project. So I'm going to go ahead and open it. As you can see, it's an empty folder right now. And I'm going to right click and go to git bash here. Now, I'm using a CLI called git bash, which comes with the Git installation. And this is basically a command line interface for the Windows environment. So this is the recommended one to use with Git. But of course, you don't necessarily have to use it if you want to use something else. So let me go ahead and open my directory in my editor, which is VS Code. Great. Now I'm going to just make my font a bit bigger. Okay, good. So as you can see right now, we have a completely empty directory. So let's go ahead and start by creating a couple of files here. So I'm going to open my terminal here, and I'm going to say touch index.html. So let's have an index file, and then let's also do a CSS file. So I'm going to do styles.css, and we'll do another one. Let's say we have a JavaScript file. So I'm going to call it script.js. Great. So we have 3 files right now in our project. Now I'm going to go to index.html and just do a boilerplate here. And let's give our document a title. We're going to say git examples, or I should say git command examples. Okay, let's save that. So remember, our first command here is supposed to be git init. Now right now we actually don't have Git initialized yet, right? So all we have is just our 3 files. So let's go ahead to our terminal here, and I'm going to clear everything, and I'm going to say git init and press enter. And as you can see, my files have turned green here, and I have a little U here on the side. So U stands for untracked. So that means that these files right now are untracked. So there we go. We have now successfully initialized Git in our project. So let's now move on to the second command. So the next command, which is git status, displays any files that have been changed since the last commit, staged files, etc. So let's go ahead and see how this command would work. We have these 3 files that are now untracked. So let's go ahead and run. I'm going to clear first, and I'm going to run git status, and let's see what we get here. So as you can see, we have a message saying untracked files, and we have a list of our 3 files in red here. So the color red means they're untracked. And it says here, use git add to include in what will be committed. Okay, so we'll be using this command quite a bit to check basically the status of our files, and you will see later on that we'll keep coming back to it. So how do we now go ahead and add our untracked files to be committed? Well, that takes us to our next command, which is git add. So the git add command just adds specified files to the staging area. Okay, now I will explain in a second what the staging area is, but let's go back to our code and see how this would work. So now that we have our untracked files here, we're going to add them to the staging area. Now, staging area is basically a step that we have to do before the actual commit, and it lets us to make sure that we're about to commit the files that we want to commit, right? So the right files, basically. There are several ways we could add these files to the staging. So one popular way to do it is just to add everything. So for that, we could use git add and then a dot. Okay, and the dot just means everything. So any files we have right now that are untracked or that are modified, we want to add them to the staging area. Now, another thing you could do here is, let's say you just want to add one of these files to the staging. In that case, you would just say git add, and you would type in your file name. For example, you could say index.html, and then it would only add the first file to the staging. Now, we don't want to do that. We want to add all of our files to the staging. So let's go ahead and type a period here and press enter. And now if we type git status again, we're going to see that our files are now in green and it says changes to be committed. Okay, and then it has a list of the files. So this means that all of these files are now in the staging area and are ready to be committed. So now let's talk about our next command, which is git commit. So the git commit command will save staged files to our local repository with specified commit message. So let's see how that works. So back in our terminal, we're going to go ahead and say git commit. Now here, usually the way we do the next step is we write a dash, and then we write an M, which is short for message, and then in quotation marks and quotes we write our commit message. All right. You usually want to be descriptive here about what you're committing, because remember, there are other developers on your team that might read these, and you want them to be able to understand what you actually did, right? Now, since this is just an example, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm just going to say initial commit, okay? And close quote and press enter. And as you can see, we get a message here, git commit, initial commit, 3 files changed, 11 insertions. And as you can see here, our files are back to their normal color, which means we have successfully committed them. And now if we actually want to check what we've committed, we're going to use our next command, which is going to be git log. So let's look into that one. So the git log command will display a summary of all our past commits. So let's see how that would work. Now, so far, we've of course made only one commit, which is the initial commit. So if we type in git log, okay, we're going to see that commit, and this is my information here. I do have my email here, so I probably don't want to show that, but it'll have basically the information with which you first configured your Git, right? It'll have your name, your email, and then it'll have information about your commit. So as you can see here, it says commit, and then it has these bunch of numbers and letters. This is basically like an ID for your commit, okay? And then at the bottom it has the name of the commit. Remember, we called it initial commit, so that's why we see that here. Now, most of the time when we want to view our past commits, we actually don't use git log, which you could use, but imagine if you have a lot of commits, you probably want to see a quick summary of your commits. You don't want to see this many lines, okay? So what you could do is you could type in git log and then -- one line. And if you press enter, you'll see a very quick summary of your commits. Okay, so much easier to read. Now, just for practice, let's go ahead and make another commit because we only have one so far. So let's make a second commit, and I'm going to make a change for this. So let me go ahead here to my HTML file, and I'm going to add a paragraph here in my body. I'm going to say first paragraph. Okay, and I'm going to save it. And you can see that as soon as I saved it here, I get an M here, which stands for modified. So Git was able to tell that I just made a change to this file. Okay, it's been modified. So now we can go back to our CLI, our terminal, and we can say git. Well, let's run the status first so we can see that this is the file that's been modified. Okay, index.html. And now we're going to say git add again. Now, because this is just one file, I could just type in the name of the file, right? Let me do that since we haven't done that yet. So I'm just gonna do it like this, enter. And now if we run status again, we should see it being ready to be committed in green. And now I'm going to say git commit m, and I'm going to give it a message of second. Actually, I'm just gonna say what I did. So added first paragraph. Okay, perfect. One file changed, one insertion, one deletion, and then I'm going to check my log. So let's say git log, one line. And now, if you remember, we should see two commits. We have our initial commit, and we have the commit we just made, which is the added first paragraph. So let's see that. And there we go. Okay, initial commit and the most recent commit. Perfect. So now let's get into a slightly different topic. We're going to talk about branches now. So the git branch command displays a list of all our branches and creates new branches. Okay, so it does several different things. Now, what is a branch, you might ask? Well, a branch is basically a different kind of version of our project. So imagine that we have a project and we want to add a new feature to it. Okay, let's say we want to try out a different theme. So we want to completely change our colors. So what you might want to do, you don't want to modify the original code, because what if you don't like the new theme, right? So what we would do in this case is we would create a new branch, and then we would call it something like new theme, okay, or theme experiment or something like this. And then we could modify all the code that we want, as much as we want, on the new branch, and it wouldn't affect our original branch, which is called the master branch. Now, if we're happy with the new theme and we decide that we want to actually keep it, we would go ahead and merge it with the master branch. Now, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. We haven't talked about merging yet, but we will cover it in our 8th command here. But my point here is, my aim was to explain to you a little bit about what branches are. So let's do an example, and hopefully it'll make more sense. So currently, as you can see here, I am on the master branch. And in fact, let me just clear my terminal here. So if you recall, the first thing that you can do using the branch command is to see which branch you're currently on. So if I type in git branch, it'll say master here, okay? And you will also see master here on the right side as well. So that basically tells us that we're currently on the master branch, and also it tells us that we currently have only one branch, which is master, okay? This is the default situation. Now, to create a new branch, we're going to say git branch, and then we're going to give it a name. So I'm going to call this, let's say, new feature. Okay, and I'm going to press enter. So we won't see any kind of message here, but the branch has actually been created. And if you want to check that, we can say git branch again, and we will now see two branches. We have the master branch, which is the one we're currently on, and then we have the new feature. So how do we actually go to the new feature branch? Well, that's where our next command comes in, which is git checkout. So the git checkout command changes our working directory to a specified branch or to previous commit. So I will show you both of these examples. So first, as I mentioned, let's see if we can go ahead and switch to our new feature branch. So to do that, we're going to say git checkout and then type in the name of our branch that we want to check out. So new feature. And now you will see that I'm now in the new feature branch, because you can see it here in the brackets. And if you type in git branch, you will see that this branch is now in green and it has an asterisk next to it. So that means that this is my current branch. So that's how we check out branches. Now I will show you a little trick here. There's a way where you can actually create a branch and check it out right away with one command. Now, if you remember, we did this in 2 commands before. So the first thing we did is we typed in git branch and then the name of the branch, right? Which created our branch. And then we did git checkout and then the name of the branch again to check it out. But we can do all of this in one command by typing in git checkout, and then we have this little flag, which is B, and then the name of our new branch. So let's create a second branch here for this example. We're going to say feature 2, okay, and press enter. And as you can see, it says here switch to a new branch feature 2. So we created the branch feature 2 and we switched into it, or we checked it out right away. I hope that makes sense. Now, the other thing that checkout can do for us, as you remember, is it can actually help us check out previous commits. So let's go ahead and clear this. And let's just remind ourselves of our previous commits by running git log, one line. So we have these 2 commits. We have the initial commit and the edit first paragraph. Now imagine that I want to basically go back to how my code was previously before I made this change. Okay, so one way we could do this is we could say git checkout, and then we can go ahead and enter the hash for our commit. So we want to go to the initial commit, so we're going to copy this hash and we're going to paste it in here. And now you will see that it says here head is now at the hash initial commit. So, and you can see from the code that our paragraph disappeared, right? Which is exactly the state in which our code was before we added the paragraph. Okay, and in brackets here you will see that we have actually the hash of this commit. So I don't want to get into heads and all that stuff here. This might a little bit over the scope of this video, but basically when you see something like head is now at this particular commit, it just means that we can't actually make any commits on here. This is pretty much read only at this time. So to get back to our branch now, we're just going to go ahead and well, first of all, let's do git branch again, and let's say we want to go back to the new feature branch. We're going to say git checkout new feature, and we're at new feature again. Okay, and as you can see, with the new feature we do have the paragraph back, okay, because when we created this branch, this paragraph was there. So let's talk about the next command, which is the git merge command. Now this command merges code of specified branch with the current branch. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so I am on my master branch here. As you can see, I checked out this branch again, and what we're going to do now to demonstrate the merge command is we're going to go to one of our other branches and we're going to make a change there to our code, and then we'll come back to the master branch and we're going to merge those changes so you can see how that works. So let's remind ourselves the names of our branches. So we're going to say git branch, and I think I'll do this in the new feature branch. So let's check it out. we're going to say git checkout new feature. Okay, so I'm here now, and the change that I'm going to make is I'm going to add a couple of paragraphs here. Okay, new paragraph. So I'm going to say let's say second paragraph and third paragraph. Perfect. Okay, so let's press save. And it's really important here that before we can do a merge, we have to actually commit our changes on this branch. Okay, so you should already know how to do that. We're going to say git add, and then we're going to say git commit and give our commit message. So I'm going to say added second and third paragraphs. Perfect. And now to be able to actually merge these changes with our master branch, we first have to go back to the master branch. So let's check it out. We're going to say git checkout master. Perfect. Okay, let's just clear the terminal. And now we're going to go ahead and perform the merge. So to do the merge, all you have to do is you have to say git merge and then the name of the branch, right? Remember, we just made those changes on the new feature branch. So we're going to say git merge new feature, press enter, and I hope you just saw that these two paragraphs were added. Okay, so now whatever code we had in the new feature branch is now available in the master branch. So I hope you can see how useful this can be. You know, having different branches gives us the ability to experiment with our code as much as we want, and then once we're sure that the code is safe and it works well, we can go back to our master branch and merge this code to the master branch. So our next command is git push. The push command is all about taking our local repository and then pushing it or making it available on GitHub for other people to see. Okay, so to be able to use this command, we first have to go to GitHub and we have to start a new project. So let me show you how to do that. So here I am on my GitHub, and I'm going to go ahead and go to the repositories tab, which is where I am right now, and I'm going to click new. And for this demonstration, we're just going to name this, I don't know, let's say Git Commands. Okay, that's going to be the name of my repo, and I'm going to make it private. You guys can do public if you want. It's really up to you. I don't want anybody to see this, so I'm going to say private, and I'm going to say create repository. And we're going to see this window here. So it says here, create a new repository on the command line, or push an existing repository from the command line, or import code from another repository. So we're interested in this option here because we already have an existing repository, right, on our system. So the first thing we want to do here is we want to just copy this command here, which will add an origin to our local repository. So git remote add origin, that's the whole purpose of this command. So in other words, you can think of it as it's going to associate our local repository with an online repository, which is why we have this link here. So let's go ahead and do that. So back in VS Code, I'm going to go ahead and paste that command right here. Perfect. So you won't see any message, but if you type in right now git remote, you will see it'll say origin. Okay, and that's because we said here git remote add origin. So origin is the name we give to our remote repository, basically. So let's go back to our GitHub. And you'll see here you have two more commands here. Now this one says git branch main. It's telling us to change our branch name to main. Now, as you know, we're currently on master, so we don't actually need to do this. This is not necessary. We're going to keep our branch name as master, but we do need to run this last command, which is git push u origin, and then instead of main, we're going to say master here. So let's copy that. And then we're going to change this to master. And as you can see, we get this long message here. So this basically tells us that our local branch or our local repository has now been pushed to the remote repository. And if we go back now, and if we refresh this page, we're going to see that we have our files here. Perfect. So getting back to our push command, right? So what we've done here so far is we've basically created a destination where our code is going to be pushed, okay, by using push uOrigin master. So now what we can do is anytime we make new changes to our code, instead of typing out all these commands that we were copying and pasting, all we have to do is say git push. Let's do an example of that. So let's say I'm going to add, let's add some code to our script file. We're going to say console log hello world. Save that. Okay, so script has been modified. So let's go ahead and add it to the staging. And then we're going to say commit. We're going to say edit console log to script.js. Okay, so far we've committed this file locally, but it's not yet in our GitHub because we haven't pushed it yet. So this is where we're going to say git push. And because we already configured our push destination, so remember we entered that URL, so Git will now know where to push our code. So all we have to say is git push, and as you can see we get a message here. And then if we look at our GitHub again, okay, and if we refresh, you can see here added console log to the scripts. Okay, so and it says here it was done now, so that's the most recent push that we did. So that's how the git push command works. I hope that makes sense. And next we're going to talk about git pull. So the git pull command merges any changes in a remote repository to our local repository. Now, when would you usually use this? Well, if you're working on a team with other developers, and let's say one of your developer friends makes a change to a code on a project you're working on, okay, and they push it up to your remote repository. So when you come back to work the next day, your friend might say, hey, you know, I made some changes to the code, make sure you do a pull, right? And what he's saying is make sure that, you know, you get the latest code. So that's a perfect example of when you would use this command. So let me show you how that would work now. So to demonstrate the git pull command, we're going to cheat here a little bit. We're going to make our own change here in our GitHub, okay? So I'm going to go to the styles.css. Now you want to pretend, of course, that somebody made this change in their local environment and then pushed it up to GitHub, right? But we're going to just do it a little bit simpler. So we're going to edit our styles.css right here in GitHub. Let's add some styling to our body. So it doesn't really matter what you write here, but I'm just gonna say background is, let's say, green, and then text color is white. Okay, so that's all I want to change here. And I'm going to go ahead and commit the changes. Now you could write a custom message here so I'm going to keep the default message here. So if you don't write anything, GitHub is just going to use this one here. So update styles.css. So commit. Okay, and now if we go back to our project here, you will see here that it says update styles.css. Okay, so that means that this file was just changed or updated. Now we want to go ahead and see if we can pull these changes into our local environment. So let's go back to our VS Code. Okay, and I cleared the terminal here. And what we want to do now is be able to pull those changes. So how do we do that? Well, there's one more thing that I actually forgot to do here in GitHub. We want to get the URL once more. here to our Git repo, GitHub repo, I should say. And then let's go back here. And all we need to say here is git. Now, watch when we run this. Keep your eye here on our styles.css. Look what happens here. Currently it's empty, right? So let's go ahead and run git pull and then paste our link. And we can see that we get that content right here, right? Pretty neat. So this is the magic of Git and GitHub. These are the kinds of cool things that it lets us do, and it really makes life much easier for us developers. Okay, so that's it for the pull command, and the last one we're going to cover is git clone. So you may have guessed from the name that the git clone command just makes a copy of an existing remote repository to our local machine. Okay, and that's all it does. So pretty simple idea. Let's go and do an example. So to demonstrate this, I'm actually going to close our VS Code. Okay, we're going to exit our current project. We don't need anything here. And I'm going to pretend that I'm starting a new project. So I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm just going to call it clone. Okay, now currently, of course, it's empty, but our goal here is to basically make a copy of whatever we have here, which is also on GitHub, and have it available in our new project, right? So let's open this with VS Code. Okay, as you can see, it's currently empty. So let's open our terminal. And I believe I still have the link in my clipboard, but let me just, in case, I'm gonna go and once more copy this link. Okay, and then back in VS Code, we're just gonna say git clone, and then we're going to paste the link. And I'm actually going to also do a little dot here, and that's just so that it doesn't, if you don't do the dot, it's going to create a new folder and then have the files inside it. So if you want the files to be available right here in the clone folder, you just need to do a dot here and press enter. And as you can see, magically all our files appear here. Okay, so they came straight from GitHub, and as you can see, everything is completely up to date and clean and nice. All right, so that's it for our last git command for the git clone. I hope that you learned something interesting here. I hope that you're more or less comfortable with all of these commands. And by the way, if you would like all the information from this video in text format, feel free to check out my blog article on this topic, which you can find at this link. All right, so thanks for watching, guys. Happy coding, and I'll see you in the next video.